Okay, today's gonna be a fun lesson. You guys voted, and we presented something special last week as one of the options to vote on. You wanted to see a theory video this week, so let's do it. We're still gonna be putting out our normal song lessons and all that, right, as we move forward, but I'm gonna give you something extra this week because you voted. So we're gonna do a theory video, and the topic that won, I believe, was actually my suggestion for the circle of fifths. Has anyone ever heard of the circle of fifths before? This one can be intimidating, especially to beginners, but don't let it frighten you. I'm gonna break it down for you. Let's go ahead and get into it. Here's the circle of fifths. The circle of fifths is essentially a way to organize all of the different keys in music. Now, when I say keys, I don't mean piano keys. I'm not talking about organizing those notes. I'm talking about organizing major keys. The key of C major, the key of G, the key of D, the key of A. All these different keys, right? Key of C, key of, let's say, F. Each key on its own stands alone. And the circle of fifths is a way for us to visualize all of the keys and their relationships to one another. So if we look on screen, we can see this diagram, and I'm going to break this down for you. If we go to the very top, we see C. And again, it's not just a C note, that means the key of C. And one thing that you've got to understand before we can really dig into circle of fifths is a concept of key signatures, okay? The key of C is at the top because the key signature is 0 flats, 0 sharps. That's our starting point, C. Now, we could either go right down the circle or we can go left down the circle. And either direction, no matter which way we go, the next key is going to be a fifth, an interval of a fifth away from the last key. So C has 0 sharps, 0 flats, that's where we started. If we go to the right, our next key is G, G major. It has 1 sharp. So C had 0 sharps. The next one around the circle is G, and it has 1 sharp in its key signature. And guess what? G is 1/5 away from C, which was our last key. Now let's keep going down the right side of the circle, also known as the sharp side of the circle, because all of the key signatures on this side have sharps. Flats are going to be on the left, but we'll get to that in just a minute. After G, continuing down the right side of the circle, we go another interval of a fifth to D. And that is our next key. And guess what? The key of D has 2 sharps in its key signature. So I hope you're starting to see this pattern. As we go to the right down our circle of fifths, we're jumping keys by intervals of fifths. C to G is a fifth, G to D is a fifth. And each time we go to a new key, we're adding an additional sharp to the key signature. Now that we know that, let's go ahead and look at all of the keys on the right side, or the sharp side of the circle. C, 0. Then G, 1 sharp. D, 2 sharps. Next up, what's a fifth up from D? A. So that's our next key, and that has 3 sharps. Those 3. A fifth up from A is E. And you guessed it, E has 4 sharps. Now let's keep moving. A fifth up from E is B. Oh, this is starting to get tricky, right? Now we have all 5 of our black notes in the key signature. 5 sharps. But we're not done yet, guys. We actually have one more key along this side of the circle. A fifth up from B is F sharp. Now we're starting on a black key, okay? And that key actually has 6 sharps. Let me explain. F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp. Now that's not an F. Here in this context, we're going to call that an E sharp. And then we have F sharp. And that's because when we do it that way, all of the music alphabet letters are still represented. F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, and F sharp. See that? So that's where we're going to end it here around this side, the sharp side of the circle of fifths. We could keep going, and then it gets real nasty and mucky, and it starts to actually come up around the flat side. So we're going to end it here, and then when we go on the flat side, we're going to come around and we're going to see that we're going to end it on the key of G flat, which, you guessed it, same note on the keyboard, right, as F sharp, which is the key we just did. But of course, along the flat side, all those notes are going to be spelled differently because we're going to be using flats and not sharps. Okay, so I hope you're with me so far about the general notion of the circle of fifths, why it's important, why it can be useful, and a helpful tool for you to understand a bit more about music theory. We're not done yet. We're going to do some review, then we're going to go around the flat side, and then I'm going to show you guys a couple of extra little tips and tricks that makes memorizing the circle of fifths a lot easier. Okay, so let's dig back in. Let's take a look now at the left side of the circle, or the flat side. Once again, we'll start on top with C because, well, again, 0 sharp, 0 flats, but this time we're going to go to the left of the circle. And as we can see, our next key is F. F has 1 flat. So C has 0 flats. The next one down the flat side of the circle has 1 flat. And I bet you already know that the next one has 2 flats, right? We'll get there. But let's talk about something first. Earlier, when we were on the sharp side, we could see that C to G was the interval of a fifth, right? This time, though, we're going from C to F. And that is an interval of a fourth, isn't it? Well, technically, if we're moving up the keyboard, yeah, C to F is a fourth. But we moved up around the sharp side. Now we're going to be moving down on the flat side. C to F moving down actually does give you that fifth interval. So this time on the flat side, we're going to be jumping down by fifths. Hence, F being our next one. And a fifth down below from F is actually B flat. So the next key around the circle on the flat side is B flat. And it has 2 flats. Okay, then we have E flat, that's got 3 flats. Then A flat has 4 flats. D flat has 5. And then here we are. Our final key around the flat side, for now at least, is G flat. G flat, A flat, B flat. Yes, C flat. That's right. No one ever likes to hear that word, but here we are. In the key of G flat, we have to call this note C flat. For the same reason that when we were in the key of F sharp, we had to call this note E sharp. Remember, we have to have each letter from the music alphabet represented. So, G flat, A flat, B flat, that's already a B, C flat, D flat, E flat, F, and G flat. Okay, so that's our flat side. Here's a quick review. We have our circle of fifths. We start with a C on top. As we move down the right side of our circle, we're going through our sharp keys, or the major keys that have sharps in their key signatures. Each one we go down in consecutive order, we add a new sharp to the key signature. So C has 0, G has 1, next up is D, that's got 2, A has 3, E has 4, B has 5, and then yes, F sharp has 6, okay? As we go around the flat side, we're going down in intervals of fifths, and this time we're gonna have flats in our key signature. Again, each time we move down, adding a new accidental into the key signature. So on top is C, 0 flats. Then we go to F, 1 flat. Then we go to B flat, 2 flats. Key of E flat has 3 flats. Key of A flat has 4 flats. Key of D flat has 5 flats. Key of G flat has 6 flats. And if you forget the order of those, all you gotta do is count in fifths. On the sharp side, count up by fifths. On the flat side, count down by fifths. So why is this useful? Why does it help to know this? Well, if I said, hey, let's play a song in the key of A, how many sharps does that have? You could either already have memorized that the key of A has 3 sharps, but more likely you're gonna have to think about it for a second. And instead of walking through the major scale in your mind, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, there's a much easier way, okay? You can think about your circle and you can say, all right, where's A? C, G, G to D, D to A. C, G, D, A. 0 sharps, 1, 2, 3. There are 3 sharps in the key of A, okay? Because after C, it's the third key, G, D, A. So that's one way to do it. But then, of course, that still doesn't tell you what notes are sharp in the key signature. Same thing goes on the flat side. So this is kind of like the part 2 lesson of the circle of fifths, which I'm kind of pumped for because there's a whole nother layer of patterns that you're about to see. So let's break this down. I want to talk about the actual accidentals within each key signature. Okay, so let's look at the sharp side. When we play our G scale, we have an F sharp. That's our first sharp. Now, every other key around the circle on the sharp side is going to start with that same F sharp. So every key that has any sharp in the key signature is going to have an F sharp, okay? Because G is our first key with any sharp, and there it is. Our next key is D, and there's that F sharp. So in other words, the sharps from the previous key in the circle of fifths carry forward along with it to the next key, but then we add one new sharp to that new key. So let's talk about that. How do we know what new sharp to add? Well, on the sharp side, the new accidental is actually going to be the leading tone of the new key. And if you don't know what the leading tone is, it's the 7th scale degree, or it's the note right before the root. So in the key of C, B is our leading tone, half step away from the root. In the key of G, we know there's one sharp. How do we know which one it is? It's the note that is a half step below the root. Leading tone resolves up to the root. Okay, now let's move to the key of D. We know F sharp stays, but what's the new sharp? Here's our root. So we have to approach the root from a half step below, which means we're going to raise this C. So it's a C sharp. The key of D has the sharp from before, which is F sharp, but the new sharp is its leading tone, which is C sharp. Now let's keep this moving. After D, we go to the key of A. This one has 3 sharps. The 2 sharps from before, F sharp and C sharp, plus a new sharp, which is going to be the leading tone in the key of A. So A, B, C sharp from before, D, E, F sharp from before, and then we're approaching our root. We need to do it from a half step below, which is G sharp. So that's our new sharp. Let's do one more and then we'll summarize. Next is E, and there's 4 sharps there. So F sharp from before, G sharp from before, C sharp from before, and new sharp is the leading tone, D sharp. So that's how you do it. You go around the circle on the sharp side, you cumulate all of the sharps from before, and you add a new one each time, that new one being the leading tone, okay? So let's get back to that same exercise. I quizzed you before about the key of A. Hypothetically, if someone asked you, hey, let's play in the key of A. Ready? Would you know what to do? Would you have to think about it? Do you have the key of A memorized? Well, if not, you can use the circle of fifths. You can say, all right, key of A, C, 0, G, D, A. So that's 1, 2, 3 sharps. Now, what are the sharps? F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp, okay? Now, this is starting to get into the newest pattern in the circle of fifths, and I'm hoping that you're catching now. The order of the accidentals within the key signature also follow the order of the keys around the circle. If that doesn't make sense, I'm going to break it down for you right now. This is super cool, all right? Check this out. A minute ago, I broke down the key of E, talked about the 4 sharps that we see in that key. Those 4 sharps are F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and D sharp. Now, if we write those sharps out next to our key of E, what we get is F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp. And if we just look at those letters without the sharps, we see F, C, G, D. Now take a look up at the top of our circle of fifths. To the left of C is F. And then if we move to the right, we go F, C, G, D. Check that out. That's moving in intervals of fifths, right? The accidentals also move in intervals of fifths. So in the key of E, for example, the way that we would say the sharps in the key of E, we would say F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp. Okay, it follows that same order. Now let's talk about the flat side. The flat side has a bit of a different kind of a trick to help memorize, okay? So the key of F is the first one around the flat side. And it has one flat, and that is a B flat. So how do we know that's a B flat? That's not the leading tone, right? That's right. The leading tone trick only works for the sharp side of the circle of fifths. The flat side, we use something different. What we're going to use for the flat side is every fourth scale degree of a new key becomes flat, okay? So key of C, 0 flats. Key of F, 1, 2, 3, 4. No, we got to flat that fourth, okay? In other words, the distance from the third to the next scale degree should only be a half step. In the key of F, that tells us we have a B flat. That's the only one, all right? So let's move on. Now, the next key is actually B flat. That's kind of cool. So B flat has 2 flats. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, don't forget, that fourth scale degree has to be a half step up from 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Our new flat for this key is E flat. So again, we're taking the flats from before. In the key of F, there was B flat. That, of course, is still present here because we're in the key of B flat. But the new flat is going to be the fourth scale degree. E flat here. And check this out, the next key down the flat side is E flat. So here I've exposed another little cool trick or pattern here that we can see in the circle of fifths. Along the flat side, your new flat in a new key is going to be the next key around the circle. Okay, so F, our new flat in the key of F is B flat. That's going to be our next key, B flat. Our new flat in the key of B flat is E flat. And that's our new key. The new flat in the key of E flat is A flat, and you guessed it, that's our next key. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and pause it right there. There's a lot more we could do with the circle of fifths, but I think that was enough for this lesson. Now what I want to do is discuss in the comments below, okay? Hit me with some questions you may have, or some comments or some observations. Do you see some other cool patterns in the circle of fifths that I didn't touch on in this video? Let me know below, let's talk about it, okay? That's one of the funnest things about my job. I'm making these video lessons for you, but then we get to interact and talk about music, right? So, I'll look forward to your comments below. Let's get a discussion going. Thanks again, everyone, for voting. This was a fun one to do a theory topic this week. Keep your eyes out for the next poll, and I'll be fulfilling your requests next week. All right, I'll see you guys then.
The features you saw on screen today can be at your fingertips with the Playground Sessions app. Co-created by music legend Quincy Jones, Playground teaches the piano with interactive feedback and gaming features, all while using your favorite songs. All right, guys, I'm Phil. Hit subscribe so I can see you for the next video.